it is becoming more of a central campaign issue. Fetterman's recovery from his stroke that he suffered just before the Democratic primary. And, it is very clear in his speeches that he is not all the way recovered. His campaign is saying, not only does he have some speech issues, he also has some auditory, some hearing issues. So I know some of the interviews that he's been conducting recently, he's got the closed captioning so he can make sure that he, doesn't miss any of the language, any of the words that are being spoken. Just to give you a sense of that, here's a little bit of John Fetterman on the stump.
Please understand the stakes in this race. Send me to Washington, D.C. so I can work with Senator Casey and I can champion the union way of life in D.C. Thank you very much, and it's an honor. I live 8 minutes away from here, and when I leave tonight, I got 3 miles away, Dr. Oz in his mansion in New Jersey. You've got a friend and you have an ally. Send me to Washington, D.C. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steelworkers.
So you can see there, struggling to get through, the talk there at the end. And the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette just put out an editorial saying, basically, let's go ahead and put this up on the screen.
His hometown paper.
They say basically Oz has been very nasty about the way that he's gone about this. But the truth is, they say that said, Mr. Oz has raised legitimate concerns. If Mr. Fetterman's communication skills have not yet recovered sufficiently to effectively debate his opponent, many voters will have concerns about his ability to represent them effectively in Washington. While he has gamely undertaken more campaign events and media interviews in recent weeks, Mr. Fetterman still speaks haltingly and relies on closed captioning to fully understand his conversation partners. This was all sort of sparked by this conversation about would he or would he not debate. There was a debate that was upcoming that he backed down of. Now the very latest is, and let's put Politico up on the screen here, he says he will debate Dr. Oz. He will do that in October, not specifying which debate or providing an exact date. But the expectation is he is going to be on the debate stage. And, I'm someone who thinks that that's important. I think it should be required of all candidates that they answer questions. And then voters can decide for themselves whether they feel, that his health concerns are enough for them to change their mind and change their vote and go in the other direction or not. They deserve to have that information. I think there's no doubt about it. But I also, and this is where I come back to the point I was making about Dr. Oz that I think you might disagree with, but because they have been so aggressive and so mean-spirited in the way that they've prosecuted this case, they've also set the bar very low for Fetterman. So if he's able to perform in a reasonable way on the debate stage, he doesn't have a very high bar to clear here. It kind of reminds me of, Biden during the Democratic primary when there was a lot of talk about I don't know if this guy's up to it at all. Then if he just got on the stage and didn't make a total fool of himself, people were like, he's okay. Yeah. That's good enough.
No, you're not wrong. That being said, is there a realistic expectation that in a month that you're going to be all that much better? I mean, I don't think there's a doctor on planet Earth that would say as a stroke victim that you should be out there, doing what John Fetterman is doing. And he's, look, I hate to say it, but if you can't understand speech properly, you shouldn't be a senator. If you can't speak like that, if that's as good as it gets, at least for the next year or so, I don't think you should be a senator. I mean, I really don't. How can you possibly live up to the demands of the job?
But no one's saying he has problems understanding or
he's having. Look at he can't speak.
But again, this is something the voters can decide.
Oh, listen, sure, I wouldn't vote for him. I can tell you that.
But I think we have a lot of examples where people look at Biden as one example, and they're like, yeah, he's slowing down. But ultimately, I freaking hate Donald Trump, so I would vote for Biden's corpse over that guy. I mean, I feel that way about, Bernie Sanders post-heart attack. I would take Bernie because he represents an ideology and is going to be there on the policies that I care about over anybody else, even if his health is flagging and if he's, slowing down physically. So I really think a lot of voters feel the same way, where it's much more about okay, do they represent my values, number one? Number two, what's the sort of national mood? I don't see that these health concerns have been all that persuasive to voters in recent elections because ultimately they care, okay, how are you going to vote? Are you able to vote? Are you able to cast votes in the direction that I want? That's what I ultimately care about. And do I feel like you are going to represent me and my interests?
I don't disagree with you.
So we'll
I think
see.
You're correct. The Bernie example is a good one. He came back and bounced back big time. Joe Biden, same thing. I do think this one is a bit more stark. And I do think also that if the man is literally unable to speak even 2 weeks up to Election Day, that will have some sort of negative effect. Doesn't mean that he'll lose. No, not at all. I do think Oz made a mistake in making the vegetable comment. If he'd ever eaten a vegetable in his life, he wouldn't have had a stroke. He didn't make that comment, to be clear. One of his campaign, I think that was a mistake. I don't think that's what he should have said. Again, given that Pennsylvania is not a particularly healthy state, especially the old people who live in Pennsylvania. So, I mean, Fetterman has a sympathy factor, but it only goes so far. And listen, Biden, yeah, he may misspeak, but for some reason with Biden, when it actually counts, he seems to be fine. It's a mystifying thing where if he's off the cuff and he's meandering, you know, even in Afghanistan, like he'll give like a forceful statement and he did that weird thing where he leaned on the podium. He's a strange cat. I don't really get it. But Bernie,
They got the drug cocktail figured out.
Bernie
for Biden.
never did look, even post heart attack. Honestly, he looked fine. I mean, for an old man, he always spoke
He actually
particularly
looked
well.
better after that.
Yeah, he really did. Like he lost. Even Trump. I mean, look, Trump is obese as hell. I mean, listen, after he left the presidency, Frank probably looks better than he did when he was in office. The thing with Fetterman is how stark it is. Like when you're skipping words and not being able to speak, and then also he made a mistake. He shouldn't have said that he couldn't debate because of health reasons. He should have just said, "I'm not going to debate somebody who I disrespect, so who disrespects me so much like Oz." Never should have cited it.
I disagree with that because I think part of what has been, I think it has been relatable the way that they've approached this because they've been, after the initial stretch, they've been relatively upfront about his recovery, that he still has these speech and auditory processing issues. One of the things they talked about for this debate is can he get closed captioning to make sure that he's hearing everything. So I think actually that is a smart way to play it because no one would be fooled if you were like, no, it's just because I don't like Dr. Oz. People would be like, dude, we know it's because you're recovering from your stroke.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think it's better for them to be candid. I think that the way that the Oz team has played it has been foolish because there is a way to raise these concerns. Like the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette did it in a much more effective way, frankly, where they're like, Oz is being an asshole, but there are legitimate questions here. The way that the Oz campaign should have done it is to try to get these, stories planted with sort of, allied media figures where it seems like it's being raised organically, where it's a press conversation, where they can weigh in just with like, gosh, we really hope he recovers. But, he needs to be able to answer questions to the public, and we're pushing forward with debates because we think it's important to have that accountability. That should have been more their tone versus this like, he's fat and he doesn't eat vegetables and we, like basically cheering for him to be ill and making fun of him for his recovery. So anyway, we'll see. I mean, it's going to be a big question mark how he's able to perform in that debate. I think there will be a lot of eyes on it. I do think the way that the Oz team has approached this, they've set the bar very low for him so that if he's able to sort of like, muster a decent performance, that's going to be good enough for voters to say, all right, it's good enough. It's much better than what was portrayed. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.